Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Finding Certainty. And Happy New Year, almost. We're here on December 30th, so another day or two, we're going to be launching a whole new 2023. So I have a very special guest today, a good friend of mine, Cindy Birkland, who's the founder and CEO of Eternity Financial. She also runs an extraordinary networking group here in the Las Vegas, Nevada area, Henderson, Nevada, called Speakeasy. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that too, because the story behind it is one you're not going to want to miss. So, Cindy, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time this morning.
Thank you for having me on the show. This is fun.
Our pleasure. So Cindy and I are more recent acquaintances. I relocated our company here to Henderson, Nevada earlier this year. And have a very good friend, Frank Hellring, who many of you may know. He runs the headliner show here on Voice America Business Buzz. Well, he introduced me to Cindy and to another good friend of ours, Simone Kavalheim, who was on the show a couple weeks ago. So we haven't known each other very long, but I've been so impressed with everything that Cindy is doing and has done and is accomplishing with her business, the way she's really blessing people's lives. I just had to have her on the show and tell you a little bit about what she's doing, how she's doing it. So again, thanks for being here, Cindy. And you live in Henderson. I think you're my first local. Well, I guess Simone is from Vegas, but you're my first actual Henderson local, my first neighbor, if you will, that's been on the Finding Certainty show. So you have that distinction.
Yeah, I have been in Henderson 27 years. So
wow.
I'm almost a local.
A little bit longer than me. I've been here about 27 minutes. So
yeah,
we just moved here from San Diego in March, as you may recall. But and primarily because as much as we love San Diego, I mean, the weather is sublime. California is kind of coming off the rails, the rising costs and the taxes and the politics, the government, just so many things that are out of our control and are not positives. That's why people are leaving California in mass. Even major corporations like Tesla and others have up and left. And so, I mean, if you're going to let Tesla leave your state, you're obviously not thinking straight or not doing something right.
There's been a lot of great businesses leave California and a lot of great people. I think the best of the best people are leaving California. I know Nevada, you're one of those people. We've gained over 250,000 people to Las Vegas from California alone this year. It's pretty mind-blowing what has happened. They keep running their business in that state like they are. They're going to see more of the same. And the people that are the ones they're taxing to death, that's the tax base they're losing. So, but more power to them. Let them do what they're going to do. They're just going to drive their state into bankruptcy, Well,
it's unfortunate because it's a beautiful state. There's a lot of good people there. We enjoyed it. We were there for 3 years. But I think we probably would have stayed longer if things were differently, just because the weather is so amazing. And we were 10 minutes from the beach and so forth. But, I think people are leaving California in many respects because they don't feel secure there. They don't know how to predict the future. They don't know how to predict taxes and other things. They don't have certainty, which is our word. But, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because of what you do to create certainty in your clients' lives. And so I always start the show out by sharing two main reasons why I've invited this specific guest on Finding Certainty. And the first is that Cindy is a phenomenal example of someone who has learned from her past, learned from hardship and trials that she went through and that were imposed on her. I mean, the crash of 2008, we're going to hear your story a little bit, but you learned from it and you've applied those lessons, and not just applied them in your own life, but now you're blessing others' lives in the process. And it's such a great story. It's such a great example of how all of us, I think, should approach our own trials of life. I mean, they're going to happen, right? It's mortality. But the second thing is, Cindy, speaking of sharing what she's learned with others, she's so outgoing and altruistic that she has created this really phenomenal networking group here in the local area that in many respects has emboldened and empowered small business here in Henderson. And I think even saved businesses that maybe would have gone out of business during COVID. And so I'm looking forward to talking about that with you a little bit later too. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your background. Where'd you grow up? A little bit about family, and how'd you end up in Henderson, Nevada?
I was actually raised in Montana. The Yellowstone River was my backyard. I had a very conservative upbringing. My father was a pastor. My mom was a homemaker. And we left the state of Montana when I was 15. My dad wanted to he wanted to get his master's degree in counseling. And so we left and moved out to Portland, Oregon, and he went to Western Evangelical Seminary and got his master's degree. During that time, I was in high school and then went on to college, got married, and I was in the title and escrow business for years in Portland, and then I went in, I was recruited into mortgage. I was in finance and mortgage, and fell in love with the mortgage industry. I got my start in second chance financing and high risk mortgages. So I learned I kind of cut my teeth on the hard kind of loans. And then I was promoted into management and given a branch in Las Vegas, Nevada. So that's how I ended up here at age 26. I was given a branch at a subprime mortgage company. And I got out here and I had about 40 employees all over the age of 40. And here I was 26 years old, taking over this branch, this young hotshot loan officer given a branch. And I didn't really go over too well. So I pretty much had to start over with the branch. I had to come in and clean house. And man, I learned a lot at such a young age. But yeah, I got here 27 years ago with a 3-year-old in tow. And so the mortgage market was very, very different in Las Vegas as it was in Portland, Oregon. Portland was more of a fast growing, high equity at the time, and Las Vegas at the time was not. We were growing about 1 to 3% in equity per year. So it was very, very difficult to do refinance loans. So I very quickly decided I needed to go out on my own. So I started my own mortgage company. And we became very, very, very successful because about that time, the market was just on its way up and we were doing incredible things. We became the number 2 company in the state of Nevada in under a year.
Wow.
So we got to the point I had about 85 loan officers and 15 on staff to support them. And we were growing and making lots and lots of money. And at that time, I also started, buying houses and flipping houses. And, I was very, very young, making all kinds of money and,
living the dream and living that lifestyle. And I had survived a lot of recessions during that process. So, as I came up in the business, there was 3 recessions that I was involved in that I learned how to get through those. When 2008 happened, however, I was not prepared for what happened there. And it was such a huge crash. It was a disaster. Let me pause you there for a minute because I want to go back to a couple of things you talked about, and then let's get into the crash because I went through it as well. I can definitely resonate with the experience, but you talk about the Yellowstone River. I mean, I'm a big fly fisherman, so you grew up in my my dream. The river runs through it, and the whole thing. And I'd rather be on a river fly fishing than probably just about anywhere else. And then I don't think I had realized that you lived in Portland. I lived in Portland for 12 years. So
I was in Portland for, I think it was 10 or 12. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We were in Lake Oswego and Sherwood, Tigard, that mostly Southwest, that area. All my kids live in Oregon still. My son works for Intel, and my daughter she went to Wellesley College in Boston on a full ride scholarship. She's the brainiac, but she's applying for dental schools there. My daughter's she's a gymnast for the Ducks at Eugene, and I've got a son in high school. I've got one son that actually is in California at Cal State, but so we have deep roots in the Northwest. It's gorgeous, gorgeous country. In fact, if I can interject, I was nervous about moving to the desert because I miss the green. I love the rivers and the trees and the waterfalls. And I didn't know if I would like Las Vegas, but have come to find out that it's a really great place to live. There's just wonderful people here. There's so much to do. It's a great airport.
What I traded was for the dryness in the desert, and it's not as pretty here in some respects. Right. But I will trade sunshine for rain any day. And, when we first moved here, every day, my 3-year-old would run to the window and go, "It's not raining today." And I would tell her, and this went on for almost a year. Every day she'd go to the window because she used to play in the rain in her slicker in Portland.
Right.
And when we got here, she was just so blown away that every day it sunned here. She'd call it's sunning again today. Like, it's going to sun every day, honey. It doesn't rain here like that. So it was a great transition for sure. But it took her a minute to get used to it because she was so used to playing in the rain every day. Poor little thing.
I can relate to that. I mean, you got to have rain to have green, but that's the number one reason we moved to San Diego. My wife just needed to get out of the rain. She needed the sunshine, and she needed to go do some work with a physician down there. She has some health challenges, but yeah. So anyway, just an aside. We have Northwest roots, and you grew up where I wish I'd grown up. I mean, I grew up in Utah, so there's great fishing here too, but we all dream of fly fishing in Montana, right? If you're a fisherman. So, okay. So moving on though, 2007, 2008, it was more than just a recession. I mean, it was a absolute crash. At the time, I owned a consulting firm. We helped startups find capital, help them with their business plans and so forth and so on. And our business literally went out of business overnight, right?
It sure would have, yeah.
I mean, the money didn't go anywhere. Yeah, it didn't go anywhere. There's some money out there, just went underground. Everybody pulled back, and I mean, I lost everything, and I know you did as well. So go ahead. Let's get into your story there, because I know it was quite the trial. I think you lost a lot more than I did, but I definitely felt the pain. So.
Well, I had, been spending accordingly to my income, and had a very large home in Anthem Country Club with a very large mortgage payment, car payments to boot, but we were doing fine. So it was like, I was moving up my income to match my money, or, my spending. The problem with that is when the bottom fell out, I remember one day, so we were doing mortgages, just like normal, but there was what we called a mortgage implode site. So we had a site that was literally telling us every day what mortgage companies were going out of business. And I remember when that site showed that IndyMac was going out of business, and IndyMac was one of the largest banks, and we did all of our loans through IndyMac. I mean, my blood was running cold. I just couldn't wrap my head around what was going on. And within 12 months, I lost 88 banks, and the final two were it was Bank of America and Countrywide, and they merged. So I was left with one bank out of 88 banks that we worked with. And so I literally lost 95% of the business that I could do overnight. And I was horrified as to what was going on. And then even we were doing loans, and then the banks would unfund the loan. So we'd get to record, docs, we'd fund, and then they'd unfund them. And I'm like, how can you unfund a loan? We just closed. So in one day, I lost, I think, $98,000 in commission in the middle. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to survive. And I drove home, and my mom, I was sitting at home in the middle of the day, I poured myself a huge glass of wine. It was like that big. And I'm just sitting on the couch like, I don't know what to do. Like, and my mom came in the door with the kids and she about fell on the floor because I was home. And she goes, you know, she was talking to me. I said, Mom, it's over. And she said, no, honey, you're always, you know, you always land on your feet. You'll get through this. And I said, Mom, it's different this time. She said, no, you're going to be fine. And it was I could not pull through it. It was over as I knew it. And everything I had was lost except for my one home. So I, at that time, had a commercial building and 12 homes, and it was a wrap.
Saw them all go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I moved to Oregon, I moved to Portland in August of 2007, and it was already starting, and I was raising funds. I'd spent the 2 years prior to that working for a real estate developer in Utah, and we had millions of dollars of projects all over the country, mostly kind of high-end areas like Vail, Colorado, and Aspen, and La Quinta, California, near Palm Springs, and Tamarack, Idaho. We built these high-end condo developments in these resort locations. And he was the same way. He was overextended because he hadn't paid cash for these properties. He put down earnest money. He had construction loans, had projects at different phases of development. And suddenly the banks stopped lending in the middle of their projects, like you, in the middle of even when it had been funded. And so I had just landed a big commission. I mean, a $500,000 commission. It's the biggest thing I'd ever seen when I raised money for a large Fannie Mae banker in Texas. And we thought, well, we are going to be, this is it, So I started my firm. We decided to move back from Salt Lake City to Oregon, where my wife is from. And we put a 20% down on a house, a big, $1 million home up on the hill in Sherwood, Oregon.
Oh, no.
We were pre-approved. We were just going to sign documents. And the bank said, sorry, that lender isn't doing jumbo loans anymore. We're like, well, what do you mean? Okay, well, let's find someone else, I guess, who will. And I spent about 6 weeks, almost every day at that mortgagor in her office, writing letters and trying to find a lender who would do this loan. My kids, my wife, 5 children, and a golden retriever were stuck in the Residence Inn in Lake Oswego, Oregon, climbing the walls, trying to close on this house. And finally, we had to end up just leasing a home because we could not get, we were doing stated income because we were self-employed and had recently started our business. That all went away, so it was a nightmare. And my real estate developer that I worked with ended up losing most of his projects, and it was I was living that life for months. It was horrible. You were smack dab in the middle. I was on one end of it. I was a client, but you were on the other end trying to fund loans, right? That was your whole business. So how did you, as you were going through that, what were the thoughts and the feelings? You talk about sitting there with your huge glass of wine, telling your mother I think it's over, but think about how you felt in 30 seconds, if you would, just kind of encapsulate it. Then we're going to go to our first break, and then we're going to come back and talk about what happened next. So,
well, when I realized, I describe it like, the Titanic hitting the iceberg. They didn't sink immediately, but they knew the second they hit the iceberg that they were going to sink. That was something you just didn't want to hit in the middle of an ocean. So I knew I had hit the proverbial iceberg and that I was going to sink. I just, and that's exactly what happened. It took about a year for me to completely sink. So I knew I was going to have to make moves to survive it. And I had a moment with me and the Lord one day. I'm like, okay, I surrender this whole entire thing to you. There's nothing I can do. I will do what I can do, but God, you're going to have to do the rest. And I just gave everything up to God because I'm like, I'm done. I'm a very resourceful young woman, but that was for me. I'm like, there's nothing else that can be done. It's got to be God from here. And the rest is history.
Yeah, I so resonate with what you're saying. I can remember having those same conversations and having those same thoughts and just saying, what do we do next and how do we get through this? So it's time for us to go to break, but we're visiting with Cindy Birkland of Eternity Financial. Come right back, folks. We'll be right back with you. We're going to continue the story and talk about what Cindy learned from it, what we both did, and what came of it, which is the rest of the story, as Walter Cronkite used to say.
That's right.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Get the news on our shows and other happenings by following us on Twitter. Find us at Voice America TRN or twitter.com/Voice America TRN.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Thanks for coming back, everybody. I always appreciate it when you don't leave and go listen to someone else. We are visiting with Cindy Birkland of Eternity Financial. And just prior to the show, I said it was Walter Cronkite who used to say that's the rest of the story, but it was actually Paul Harvey, as Cindy reminded me. I knew it was one of the two. But
we're dating ourselves, Patrick, for sure.
I know. I think wearing my suit like I am today, I look a little bit like one of those old-time news broadcasters, but I told Cindy I'm wearing a special just for her. The truth is I'm going to a wedding right after this show. So
I thought I was special.
You are. It's for both of you. But anyway, so we were talking about, prior to the break, about the crash of 2008 and how it affected both of our businesses, and especially yours, Cindy. I mean, you had a dozen homes. You had commercial property, you had a thriving business. I know you said 85 employees or close to 100 employees.
Yes.
And that's a big deal. I mean, that's not a small endeavor. It's not a small business. And so you talked a little bit about how you basically turned to the Lord and said, you got to help me through this. I don't know what to do next. And if you don't mind, continue with your story of what came to you, what impressions you had, and where you went from there. Because I know you did pivot, and you learned some things that you wish you'd known 20 years ago that you're now teaching to others. You gained some lessons and some insights and so forth. I think that migration that you made, that transition from where you were then and where you are today, is a really fascinating story. It's something that I think our listeners can really benefit from, would really love to hear, because it has lessons and principles woven into it that can impact and bless any of our lives, I believe. So
yeah. Well,
the time is yours.
I was going, I knew that the mortgage business, I couldn't stay in it. There was no way to make any money. There was just, nobody was lending money. And, I had 3 young kids at the time to take care of. And I was a single mom. And I was like, I didn't have a back door, I didn't have anybody to share in expenses with me. And my house payments were huge. And I had to figure out, okay, what houses am I going to let go right away? It was literally that kind of a thing. And so I also had to switch careers because I'm like, okay, after being in the mortgage business 20 years and nobody's lending, I gotta make some kind of a pivot, some kind of a move. So I really, how do I say this kindly? I went into the timeshare industry, and I chose timeshare because it was still real estate and it was something I knew. But I knew Vegas had been one of the hardest hit markets. So I knew that if I did timeshare in Vegas, timeshare is all around the world, and we would be attracting people from all over the world. So I wouldn't be as affected if I did, even if I stayed in real estate in Las Vegas, as long as I did it in timeshare, I wouldn't be as affected. So I went into timeshare, and I had to learn the business very, very quickly because I had kids to feed. So I learned the business, and I basically stayed in timeshare and did pretty well at it for about, I think it was 3 years, to survive that. During that time, though, I had made some investments, and the investments tanked. And I was just looking at all my, everything that I thought I had set up that was just long-term savings, and everything I had set up with my financial advisors disappeared almost overnight. And I just couldn't believe that, everything that I had was gone. I mean, it was one thing to lose money in real estate, but all my other investments. Well, in my horror, I realized I got very messed over with the people that did my finances. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have really time to figure out what went wrong. I just had to get in and go into survival mode and feed my kids. So as a process, I was like, one of my prayers to the Lord was like, God, you got to help me figure out what I did wrong. Because I have always been the person that I cross every T, I dot every I. I'm kind of a perfectionist. I don't do number 2 very well. I have to be number 1 at everything I do. And with my money, it was the same way. Well, I learned, I had met up with a gentleman, and he was like, Cindy, let me teach you a little bit about how money works. And I was like, as a mortgage professional, I thought I pretty much understood all that. I learned I did not. And after spending a lot of time with this gentleman, I learned what had happened to me, and I was very, very angry. I was like, I cannot believe this could possibly happen. So in my frustration and anger about what happened to me, I ended up going into the financial industry. Because when I learned how many products and what was out there and what was available, I was like, why didn't my financial advisors put me into these products? Because had they done this, I would be living the dream today. And I learned that my financial advisors made a great bit of money off me, and I lost. And I had decided that I would get into the money business so that on my watch would never happen to anybody. And I would spend the rest of my life telling people what I knew and what I learned about money. And so I think that's why I've been very, very successful. My story in the money business, because my story is one of a lot of loss. And now I teach people, when I sit down and I watch them suffer the same losses I did, and I am explaining to them why they're losing money and what's going on with their portfolio, they get that look in their eye that's pretty pissed off too, excuse me, because they're like, why is this happening? And I said, you don't need to be losing money. You can invest your money and not lose money. And they're like, well, why didn't my financial advisor or planner put me in this? And I'm like, well, that's a question you should ask them. But usually they end up transferring their portfolio over to me because, I have spent many, many years learning about my industry and learning and shopping products and why you would do this product and why this. And I've just found that sometimes I, as an advisor or a financial planner, I take less money, but it's a better product for my client. And I know that when I do the right thing, I always win. And so for me, it's not so much about commission, but it's about doing the right thing for my fellow man. And that's kind of where, the same thing happened with when I opened Speakeasy. It was really about those that were also in my shoes, helping to save them through this process of what happened with COVID,
Yeah.
So that's kind of always been my mentality is when you help a child of God, you can never outgive God. So when I help someone that God loves, God blesses me back so much more. I don't worry about money and commission. It comes automatic, God blesses me. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Man, there's a lot loaded into all of your comments here, Cindy. You talk about timeshare. I worked in vacation ownership for several years with a company. Well, we've all heard of Wyndham, right? And I was a customer first. I liked it so much I went to work for them. And so another similarity between us. But as you talk about how you've been through a lot of loss and you learned your lessons from that, and I think that's a pattern in life that most of us learn from hardship, right? We learn from hard times. It's interesting because many times counselors and coaches and professionals like you, they go into the field they're in because they want to do better than the experience that they've had, right? We see parents who are fantastic parents, but they had a terrible childhood, right? Because they say, I'm not going to allow that to happen to my kids. And you're saying, I'm not going to allow the same thing to happen to my clients that happened to me. Mm-hmm. And so it's very, I think it's admirable and it's inspiring, but it's a very poignant commentary on experts in their field. If you look at their past, I think you'll see that pattern through many of their stories. It's definitely my own. I started and built a company our company, Certainty Management, the kind of company I always wanted to work for because I couldn't find it anywhere, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think I created with my mortgage company. We had such a great mortgage company because I had worked for several and I was like, I don't want my mortgage company to be anything like that,
Exactly.
And the same thing with my financial services is, my team, we create our own day. We create what we want every single day. We don't have people, I don't work well for other people because I am such a creative and, an overachiever, and I usually outwork other people. So it's like, I've always been a CEO because I just, I'm always looking for that, creating that work environment that people just love to come to work and they can't wait to get to the office and we can't wait to be with each other. And I feel like we've done a good job. I have a very small team now, but we enjoy one another's company and we create our day. We sit down and go, okay, what are we creating today? And I wouldn't have it any other way.
I wouldn't. I couldn't agree more. I want to comment on the name of your company because you've talked about God, and I know you're a woman of faith. You're Christian, and you have a ministry, A-N-D.
Yes.
That might have you comment on here in a minute, but I love that you've woven faith into your company name, Eternity Financial,
Well, let me correct you really quickly. Eternity Financial, I actually run Eternity Financial in Las Vegas. Eternity Financial was actually created and is owned by a very close friend of mine. His name is Edward Malikan. He is a very fabulous Jewish man from California, and he actually created Eternity Financial and asked me if I would take over and create a branch of Eternity Financial. So we joined forces, about 5 years ago. So I was boots on the ground for him in Las Vegas. But of course, I was going to work with someone who was Jewish. I'm like, the favored one of the Lord. Yeah, I'm in. I'm all in, And he is an amazing man. We are great partners. So he's not my boss, so to speak, but it is his company, and I do run his company here in Las Vegas. My company is called And Sales and Marketing. My ministry is called And Ministry. There's a trick there with the word and. My slogan is living in and, not or, for more. So that's why I just keep adding companies or whatever. And I also started a foundation this year called Nevada's Giving. So I've been a busy
Nice.
girl. Yeah.
So let's talk before the next break. Let's talk about this premium funding investment.
Premium financing. Okay.
Premium financing. It's something that most people have never heard of.
Yes.
And yet, can you explain how it works and why it's one of your favorite offerings? I know
Okay. So
you're really
one of the
passionate
things
about it.
that when I learned about this product, I became so angry because I would be so wealthy today had my financial advisors put me in this product. But because I find a lot of people in the industry, they're afraid of this product because there is a lot of moving parts to it and it's a lot of work for a financial advisor or planner. But for me, coming out of the mortgage business, it's not a lot of work. It's actually much easier than doing a mortgage. But some financial advisors steer away from it because it's just, it has a lot of moving parts and they're afraid they're going to screw it up. But I'm like, you have to do the best job for your client. And if a product is the best for them, you've got to figure out how to get it done for them. And so I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeve and get my hands dirty for a client. Well, I learned about this product. Most people don't know about it because it was originally designed for the affluent. Premium financing is a life insurance policy, but it's usually for someone, like historically, it would be for a doctor that makes, $8 million, $10 million a year, and they need a life insurance policy that if they were to pass away, could take care of all their bills and keep their family going and their company going long after they've passed away. The problem with huge life insurance policies like that is they're very, very costly. And let's say this life insurance policy is going to cost maybe $3,000-$4,000 a month. Well, a lot of people wouldn't want to pay for a life insurance policy like that. It's just too cost prohibitive. So what happens is a bank will come along and they will fund the policy with the client. Okay. So for every dollar you put in, the bank will put in $3. So the bank is basically picking up the bill on this. Well, why would a bank do this? Well, they actually make interest on this money that they're actually loaning the money. And the great news about a premium financing deal is that you don't have to come up with collateral. It's not like a mortgage loan where you're having to come up with all this documentation and prove your tax returns and all this kind of stuff, because the life insurance policy is actually the collateral. So the bank is actually funding the life insurance policy, and what you end up with is a huge life insurance policy, and it's being funded kind of like your mortgage. You only put a small percent down on your house, the bank funds it, and then you pay them back over time. A premium financing life insurance policy is the same thing. It's just that now they've created premium financing for maybe the up-and-coming affluent, maybe somebody that makes $100,000 a year or $150,000 a year. So now your middle-class people actually can do a premium financing, and the bank is, footing most of the bill. So now you've got a beautiful life insurance policy, and in retirement, you're making a huge, triple and quadruple what you would make in retirement that you could ever do with a 401k or anything like that. It's just that, like with the 401k, it can go backwards because it's in the stock market. Premium financing, it cannot go backwards because it's tied to an index universal life policy, which has floors. So it can never go backwards or lose money. So had somebody put me in this product when I was making all my money, I would be pulling down almost $200,000 a year in tax-free retirement income. And again, I'm into tax-free money. I prefer tax-free rather than tax. So I've spent a lot of time really researching what is the best product for people that can, that can afford it or qualify for things. It is my favorite product that I offer.
Well, it's very fascinating. I have lots of questions, and We're up against our next break, but when we come back, let me ask you a question or two more about it. Let's dig into this a little bit more. And then I want you to share the story of Speakeasy, because it's always amazing how fast this hour flies by. We think, we got to fill a whole hour. Well, it just goes by like that. Easy. But speaking of easy, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting though. I'm interested to know the minimums and things like that. Is it? And I like how you refer to the up and coming. I know you use the word emerging affluent.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's really a fantastic term, because I know I believe that we have the ability to all develop wealth. Yeah. And to come out of where we're at, to achieve these levels, we need good mentors. We need good advisors like you. We need to learn from those who've gone before us. And yeah, let's go to break though. We're visiting with Cindy Birkland of Eternity Financial, and lots more to say. We'll be right back, guys.
Follow us on Twitter at VoiceAmericaTRN. Get the lowdown on guests, new shows, and your favorites. That's VoiceAmericaTRN.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, Team, like Mary.com.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, Team, like Mary.com.
Have you become a member yet? Sign up now to become a member of Voice America. It's always free and easy. Plus, you get to take advantage of some great member benefits. Get unlimited access to millions of hours of on-demand content across all of our channels. Keep track of your favorite episodes, shows, and hosts in your own customizable library. Find out what shows you might be interested in based on your favorites. Plus, you get insider access with our newsletter. Membership gives you more. Sign up at voiceamerica.com and click register at the top right.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty, everyone. We're visiting with my good friend Cindy Birkland with Eternity Financial. And tell us again your name of your actual branch.
So I'm in Las Vegas for Eternity Financial, but I have my own company called And Sales and Marketing.
And tell us more a little bit about why you chose the and, because I think it's an interesting insight.
Well, I knew, when I was rebuilding after, the devastation, I said, I'm going to build a monopoly, and I'm going to start with a company called and then I'm going to add subgroups. So I started with And Sales and Marketing, and then I added And Ministry, and I just keep adding companies. So my slogan for the company is living in and, not or, for more. Because a lot of people believe they can have this or that. And I say, well, what if you could have this and that? So, when I do coaching or, ministry or whatever, I make sure that people understand that we live under a God of much, and he wants us to have much. And so the word needs to be and, not or. Because you don't have a choice between one or the other. You get to have both. And
Right.
and. So that's where and came from.
I love that. He is infinite, right?
Yes.
I'm a big proponent of that abundance mindset of living in faith.
Yeah.
I was just talking with my parents this morning. My dad has a lot of health issues, and they're talking about changes they've had to make and how they've had to pivot. And, whether we're talking about our health or our finances, our faith, we have to be able to maintain that eternity focused perspective, right? That there's more possible. There's abundance. There's more. I wrote a book. I wrote a chapter in a book that came out recently. You can find it on Amazon. It's called Mission Matters. I was asked to write a chapter. It's focused on CEOs whose companies are making a difference. And I wrote my book or my chapter, on accountability. They actually asked me to write the introduction as well, and which I did as a metaphor with fishing, just so you know. I mentioned I'm a fly fisherman, right? But in the chapter, I talked about how one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves is, what else can I do? Sometimes it's to ask for help. Sometimes it's to consider a different perspective or step away from it. So maybe we're too close to it or whatever. And so your whole mantra of and versus or goes right in line with that, right? Okay, so real quick before we run out of time, tell us just a little bit more about the premium financing. Are there minimum investments? Does it have to be an accredited investor or something like that?
Not at all. So the basic to this now, because it's for the emerging affluent, the number you must make as a household income, this could be a husband and wife together, you must make at least $100,000 a year. So they will ask you to provide the last 2 years of your tax returns, just like you would for a mortgage, to show that you made that kind of money, that you can afford it. So what you need to understand is you only make 5 payments into this premium financing, into this life insurance policy. You make it once a year for 5 years, okay? It's based on your age and your health. You must be in good health. You cannot be a smoker. You have to have proof that you can make these payments. So let's say you're a 30-year-old male and your premium might be around $30,000 a year for 5 years. So you're going to be making a premium of $150,000. But remember that the bank is going to be making 3 times that. So they're going to be putting in $450,000 into the policy. So you're using the bank's money to compound all this money. So you're only making a one-time payment a year. So typically I'm looking for people that have saved their money, or maybe they're very behind on their retirement. Typically this is a story with doctors. They start making a bunch of money and then they get married and their wife starts helping them spend all their money. And now they're driving these amazing cars and they've created this amazing lifestyle, but they haven't created a retirement to go with it. So they can show the income and they can make these premium payments, but they're usually behind because they haven't tackled their retirement. Many of us, most people don't realize that you need to save 30% of your income to have a retirement that's worthwhile. Well, most people go, oh my God, I can barely live day to day. How could I ever save even 10%? So premium financing catches you up and gets you where you need to be. But it's not for somebody that's getting over the age of 61, 62 years old. This is somebody that we need to get before they age out. So I try to, I love getting people between the age of, 30 and 55. And then also now they've allowed us, I have a client right now that she only makes about $30,000 a year, but her parents make about $120,000 a year. And they would like to give her retirement now. They're getting up in age. And so we have a program called the Greatest Wealth Transfer Ever. That's what it's called, the Greatest Wealth Transfer Ever. And the Bible talks about the greatest wealth transfer when the Israelites left Egypt. That was the greatest wealth transfer until what we're seeing now. Now, with the baby boomers aging out, we're seeing the greatest wealth transfer ever. So the company I work with now has a program called the Greatest Wealth Transfer Ever. And that's where baby boomers, or people that are getting older, they want to give their children and their grandchildren their wealth now while they're still alive. So what we're able to do is to prove their income along with her income, and they are paying her premium payments over the next 5 years out of their annuity, so that they know that it's guaranteed that she will have a beautiful retirement. And they know this while they're alive. They don't want to have to worry about her having to get married or something just to make to have a retirement. So this program is so beautiful, that especially if you have a kid that maybe hasn't been very wise with their money, or maybe have had some addiction in the past, and they're afraid that if they pass away and someone gets maybe $1 million, that they'll squander it away. This ensures that can't happen. So there's so many moving parts to this thing. It is a really fantastic program, but it guarantees that the client will have a tax-free retirement income for the rest of their life. That is very, very lucrative. So
that's really interesting. As I was telling you during the break, I'm a huge fan of indexed universal policies. You cannot,
and that's what it's tied to. Yeah, you cannot lose your money. The money goes into the stock market, but the life insurance company takes on all the risks. So you're only making money on years that the stock market is making money, but the years that the stock market loses money, you hold. Life insurance company takes the beating if need be.
Yeah, we have an index policy that pays a minimum of like 4% or something guaranteed. And yet anything above that, you make it. But if it drops below, you don't lose. You have correct. That guaranteed return. Is your bottom, is it a similar rate? Is it higher than that, lower than that?
So the bottom is at 0. Okay. But again, when you have a life insurance company putting in 3 to 4 times what you're putting in, it's like having a 401k plan on crack. You have you putting in $1, and then let's say your boss is putting in $1. But the problem is, if next year, if the stock market bottoms out, let's say you lose 30%, everything you put in and your boss put in was for nothing. In this case, with the premium financing, they're putting in 3 times what you did. And if the stock market goes down 30%, you're holding right at 0. So to me, that's a win, because no matter what, you're getting 3 times your money guaranteed in this product.
Plus, there's a death benefit at the end, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, we've got about 2 more minutes before the show is over. Tell us your 60-second story on Speakeasy, because I think it's really interesting.
Okay. So what I saw with when they rolled out COVID and they were going to shut down everybody, the first thing I knew was this is 2008 all over again, and I am not going to go down. And I am not going to watch my fellow business owners here in Las Vegas go down. So I decided to have a networking event held at my home. Obviously, restaurants were shut down, and I wasn't going to let our governor tell me that I was not essential, or my fellow business owners were not essential. So we started with 18 people at my home right when COVID started, and I started holding the networking event once a month at my home. We have gotten into upwards of 120 business owners coming through. So we had to start a west side. A friend of mine opened his home in the west. We've had Summerlin and Henderson, and we typically will have 70 to 80 people through my home once a month for Speakeasy. And we've kept it going. It's been going now about 2.5 years. And the reason we do this is because there was so many businesses that would have gone under had they not had an outlet in which to do business. So we saved three businesses from bankruptcy, and we've had 2 startups since we've started. So I'm very, very proud of Speakeasy Networking here in Henderson. It's been a wild ride. Let's just say that.
Well, I've been to your events. I don't know of anyone who puts on a nicer event. Just the food is always amazing. It's just sort of a potluck approach, and so you have really loyal members who come
Yes.
every month.
Yep, they don't miss. Yeah.
Okay, so in closing, we could talk lots more. I'm telling you, the hour flies by on these shows. But in closing, how can people get a hold of you? And where do they go to find more information?
Easiest way would be cindybirkland@gmail.com, or you can reach me on my cell phone. I'll give you my private cell phone, 702-683-7429.
All right, and cindybirkland.com, right, is the website?
Yep. cindybirkland.com.
If you have questions on the show, everyone, or anything more on my guest today, Cindy Birkland, or about Certainty Management, our profitability consulting firm, please text the word certainty to 26786, and we will get you more information. So thanks again for being on the show today, Cindy. It's a real pleasure to get to know you. I'm so glad we met and are becoming friends, and just keep on keeping on. What you're doing for the community and your clients is very impressive. So I wish you the very best.
Thank you for having me.
Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Cindy. It's going to be a great next year, and I'm looking forward to lots more conversations just like this one.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience. Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.